Okay, guys, so we got a new series here for y'all, Talkin TUF, as you can see by the title. I'm sitting here pretty much just on this fine morning. Well, not fine morning. It's actually raining outside. It looks pretty horrible. But, I mean, it can't be as bad as me. My beard's getting pretty long. The hair is out of whack. That's why we're wearing the Sugar Sean hat, represent. But, yeah, I mean, I figured I'd pop on here, talk about the new season of TUF, talk about the first episode, which came out a couple days ago, and just break it down for you guys. Hopefully somebody will get into it, somebody will want to watch it just based off this. That's the goal here, and that's just the goal for the channel, obviously. You know, we want to get more people into the sport and just learning about it. So, yeah, I guess let's just get right into it. I mean, if you guys don't know, TUF stands for the Ultimate Fighter. And it's been a big part of the UFC's lifespan, I would say, just because like after Dana White and the Fertitta brothers had bought it in 2001, it was a failing brand, and TUF pretty much resurrected the show, and that was because of a fantastic fight that has to. I mean, if it's not on YouTube, just find it because it's a great fight. Forrest Griffin versus Stephan Bonnar. Just one of the greatest wars in UFC history, and really just made the company into what it's turned into. Gave it a big boom at the time when it really needed it. And what it is pretty much, it's a reality show / tournament. I mean, loose reality show. It's because like it's not like the Real Housewives. It's not like one of those types of shows. It's more, I would say, maybe like Big Brother with you know, with MMA. And these guys and girls, they're living in the same house, and they're living in there for a few months, you know, without any contact with the outside world, and they're just there to fight, train, and you know, that's just how it is. And it's a tournament, and the winner of that tournament gets a 6-figure contract in the UFC. And you don't necessarily have to win to prove yourself valuable. I mean, if the boss likes you, or the bosses, I should say, like you, you know, that usually merits you a shot in the UFC. I mean, there's been plenty of tough contenders that didn't win it that ended up being great fighters in the UFC. I mean, one's fighting this weekend. You got Rose Namajunas fighting Carlos Esparza. They fought in the TUF finale, obviously, when the strawweight division was first coming into the UFC. So, I mean, obviously, there was a lot of fighters from that season who ended up being in the promotion. But other people, you know, you got guys like Ally Quinta, who lost to Michael Chiesa in the TUF 15 finale, and obviously Ally Quinta turned out to be a UFC mainstay, beat a lot of good guys, fought Khabib for the title on a day's notice, went the distance with him when a lot of great fighters haven't. Aside from that, Vicente Luque is another one that I think of, top welterweight contender, even despite his last loss. You know, he was on the same season as Kamaru Usman, actually, and he lost, I think to a wrestler, honestly. I think he might have just gotten controlled on the ground, if I remember correctly. But, yeah, I mean, that just goes to show you, though, that you don't have to win the show to be one of the best UFC fighters around. So, aside from that, I guess we'll just get into the episode. The two weight classes that they picked I liked. It was heavyweight and women's flyweight. And I like that combo just because I think you're getting one side of it that's like a lot of strength, power, and then the other side of it is a lot of technique. And pretty much I think that the heavyweights, they, especially on like the entry level, kind of getting into the UFC like a lot of these guys are, their cardio sometimes is a little suspect, and I think we saw that in the fight that came later in the episode. I'll say this right now, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. For anybody who doesn't want to know and wants to watch it first, I suggest doing that, but some people might just want it spoiled, who knows. So, yeah, I mean, just wanted to say that, get that out of the way, but anyway, I think the heavyweights, they have the cardio problems sometimes, but the thing is, the trade-off is you get a lot of slugfest because of that, and a lot of people enjoy those. And the thing about heavyweight slugfest is even if you're not a power puncher at heavyweight, you got a lot of guys who are just like up there 245, 250, 260 in terms of like how much they weigh. And I mean, even if you're not a power puncher, you're going to pack a punch whether you realize you do or not. So there's that. But then women's flyweights, there's not as many finishes as there would be obviously at heavyweight. So I feel like we're going to get a lot of interesting technical fights, or at least I hope so. I don't know as much about some of the female fighters. I've seen a few of like both of the flyweights and heavyweights just on Instagram on the page, because I mean, when you run an MMA page, your explore page is a lot of mixed martial arts stuff. So you see like a lot of the regional fighters and stuff like that too, because a lot of them are associated with the higher level ones that you know and love. So pretty much I'll just kind of get into some of the fighters that I kind of thought were interesting. The first one that I really thought was interesting was Bobby Maximus of Team Pena. He's a heavyweight, 43 years old. Now, he says he wants to just prove people wrong. Now, I don't know if that means just go far in the competition or actually win it, but I'm rooting for Bobby Maximus. He's got a lot of confidence, and I like his reasoning. You know, like he wants to just shut people up. You know, a lot of people think that you're 43 years old, what are you even doing? But the thing is, at heavyweight, there's a higher average age, just because like it's not as much on speed as it is, you know, power and technique. So if you got that down and you have a style that can win you fights, age isn't really as crazy of a thing as at heavyweight as it is at maybe a men's weight class like bantamweight or featherweight, just because they're smaller and they're relying a lot more on speed. But the women's flyweights, I like I said, I don't really know too many of them, so I'll stick with the heavyweights. One of them was talking to one of the women's flyweights, Mitchell. He's literally, his voice is identical to Nick Diaz, and it is kind of scary. Even his like personality, I was like, this guy's either a poser or he's from California, and lo and behold, he's from California. So there you go. He was pretty much just saying that he had been slated to fight Muhammad Usman, who I'll get into in a tiny bit. He was slated to fight Usman, and Mo Usman had pulled out, and then he said he fought some bum a couple weeks later, and so he pretty much was alluding to the fact that he thinks he was scared to fight him. And hey, who knows? I mean, that might be the truth. We'll see. I like the way, like, it's just so hard when guys talk like that to not compare them to the Diaz brothers. But when they're from like a similar area and like you're from Cali like that, I tend to believe that it's kind of for real. So, you know, on to Mo Usman though. He's definitely a lot more raw than his brother, Kamaru Usman, obviously, number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC currently. Although I have him number 2 behind Volkanovski, but that's neither here nor there. But Usman, I saw him fight one time on Fight Pass a couple of years ago. It was in Titan FC, which is one of the regional promotions down in Florida, I think. And it wasn't the most impressive performance. He didn't get a win. I want to say he fought in the PFL one time too. I'm going to look this up because I don't want to be wrong. Let's see. Always go to Tapology. He's 7-2. His last loss was in the PF. Yeah, it was the PFL. That's right. That's where I saw him. And he fought in Titan FC before that. That's what got me thinking about that. But he lost by rear naked choke. So I don't know. I mean, take that as you will. He's still relatively young in the sport. I mean, not young in age. He's 33, but, you know, we'll see how he does. Maybe we'll get that fight with him and Mitch. You know, you got a storyline developing. But, trains out of... that's interesting. But, anyway, I guess we'll see maybe him versus Mitchell at some point, hopefully. It's interesting to me when guys like, you know, not just Mitchell, obviously, but guys like him who are going to, like, talk immediately when getting into the house. It's kind of interesting to me because, you know, you never want to put your foot in your mouth in the tough house because, like, you talk a lot of shit and you fight in one of the first fights and you get your ass beat. It's going to be a rough time living in that house for the rest of the season. So there's definitely a lot of people who are like that, a lot of guys who talked and ended up not being as good of fighters. You know, you got one guy, and I was talking about the Diaz brothers just now, Tough 5, Nate Diaz won that one, but on that season, there was one guy, his name was Gabe, and I remember he was just talking so much to all these guys, and then eventually it came time for him to fight, and I want to say I feel like he didn't make weight, or he had a horrible fight, and regardless, either lost or just fought, like, had a bad weight cut, and it was just a disaster, and like everybody was just getting on him, and I think he left the show early for some reason. I forget why. But yeah, you got things like that. You got guys like the "Let Me Bang Bro" guy, Julian Lane. That guy, highly recommend looking up that clip on YouTube if you've never seen it before. It's an old TUF highlight. Let Me Bang Bro on YouTube. Julian Lane, an iconic moment in the TUF house. But, I bring guys like that up because, now Mitchell, he's talking a little bit of smack. He's talking tough, if you will. So he's talking about Mo Usman. We'll see what happens there. But on to, I could go on straight to the fight, but I do kind of want to talk about the coaches a little bit, Juliana, Pena, and Amanda Nunes. UFC 269 when they first fought was a pretty good night for me. I did the fantasy lineups on DraftKings for that one, and I ended up winning $80. I was in the top 15 out of a few thousand. It was pretty cool actually. I was pretty hyped. That was a great night. A lot of things went right for me gambling wise, but Juliana Pena beating Amanda Nunes, that was something else. I remember saying before that I didn't think that Juliana would win, but if there's anyone who had a style to beat Amanda, it was her, because Amanda, and her last loss before that was Kat Zingano, who fights in a similar fashion to Juliana. And that fight, Juliana was very confident going in, and I guess rightfully so. We all wondered whether it was false confidence or not, or if it was actually just her being real. And I think, judging by the way that the fight went and the outcome, I'd say it was real confidence. And she seems like she's still very confident, and even more so now that she got a win over Nunes. But in totality, just in the episode, she seemed very relaxed, very chill, and honestly, the opposite of what Amanda Nunes sounded like she was. Amanda, and I don't mean that in the sense that Amanda didn't sound confident. It's almost like she sounded overconfident, as if the first fight was a fluke, and she wants to right the wrong just in that way, and not because Juliana might just be a better fighter. And I don't know. I don't like when people go into fights like that. And then, I remember the news that she had left American Top Team to kind of start her own training, which is I don't know, it's kind of questionable when fighters do that, because if you've won a lot with the same team doing the same thing, and then one time you lose, and that's when you start to kind of go to different directions, you never really know what that means in terms of a fighter's psyche. So I don't know, it just seemed like Amanda was pretty overconfident. She just seemed like she was trying to start things during the episode. There was one point when Team Pena was leaving and Team Nunez was coming in, and she was like, "Oh, hi Julia, how you doing?" And then at the end she was like, "Yeah, but finish your practices earlier." She was trying to just talk a little smack, but very passive aggressively, which I don't like. I feel like if you're gonna talk, really talk, and it wasn't even really acknowledged by Juliana, because I don't even think Juliana cares. And on to the fighters and stuff. Juliana seems like she's a great coach. She was very locked in the clips that they showed. She was very invested. You could just tell, and she was giving very specific advice too to her fighter Zac Pauga before his fight with Nyle Brantling of Team Nunez. And it was just interesting because Nyle was more of a grappler and Zac Pauga is more of a striker. So Juliana was saying, well, if I'm fighting you coming in as a wrestler, I'm waiting for you to throw those sloppy leg kicks for you, and so I can get those takedowns. And just to give him that perspective, and to just give him a game plan from almost the opposite perspective. She's like, all right, well, if I was fighting you as a wrestler, this is what I'd do, so this is what you should do. I think that's a very interesting approach and a good approach to go into the fights. And Amanda Nunes' coaching style, don't get me wrong, she seemed like she was pretty intense herself, but I don't know, I just think Juliana is very much invested in how the fighters do, and she's very laid back, and while Amanda Nunes is very much trying to right the wrong of the first fight, and I feel like that might affect her coaching. So getting into the fight, like I said, it was a striker versus grappler match. Zac Pauga of Team Pena, like I said, good striker, had a crazy interesting story. So he said he had played a little bit for the Houston Texans and got cut, and then he kind of had a short career in rugby, and after his athletic career kind of didn't really pan out, he decided to become a cop so he could support his family. And while he was doing that, he kind of felt a void, and because of that, he went to a gym in Colorado to train, and it just so happened to be one of the gyms that some of the guys from Elevation Fight Team train out of. And if you guys don't know, Elevation's got some great fighters. You got Corey Sandhagen, Neil Magny, Curtis Blades, Alistair Overeem, Drew Dober. even the Trevor Whitman people who associate with them, you got Rose Namajunas and Justin Gaethje and Kamaru Usman. But let's see here, what else we got. Yeah, he was a former cop, like I said, and I think just the fact that he discovered Team Elevation by accident as like the team that he trains with is pretty crazy, because he said he was just going in there to train, and then eventually they called him and they were like, yeah, you should come up and roll with some of the UFC guys, and he was training with guys like Curtis Blades in his home video, just very, very high level training partners. So that definitely stuck out to me, and compared to Nyle Brantling, who also seemed like a great dude, cool guy, hard worker, very hard worker. I mean, he says he's living the farm life, and we saw it with like all the pigs and stuff in his episode, and in the episode in his home video. But just like, I don't know, like that was the first sign for me, just because Team Elevation is such like a high level fight team, and then they also have great cardio because of where they train. And Nyle being from Nebraska, I can't imagine that the training there is as good as it is in Elevation, but both of them are coming in undefeated. And Team Nunes obviously had the plan for Nyle to take him down and just try and win that way. And Zac was obviously doing the opposite, trying to win on the feet. But the fight itself was honestly insane. It was a war. So in round one, Zac, he hurt Nyle pretty bad with one of his punches. And the thing with Nyle that I noticed right away was that compared to Zac, Nyle wasn't really setting much up. There wasn't many jabs. Like, a lot of it was just, he was very like one-dimensional. You could tell that he was trying to get it to the ground, and there weren't any feints to set the takedowns up. There weren't any feints to set up his striking, just like looping shots, which are never good for your cardio in MMA, especially when you're trying to take the guy down a bunch of times. But he got hurt early, but he recovered pretty well. He got a takedown eventually, and, did pretty well on top. He got a pretty nice head and arm choke like that. It was pretty deep, but Zac did end up scrambling out of it with Juliana Pena's advice from the corner. And from there, it just seemed like Zac was just dominating the fight, because Zac was definitely tired himself, I'll say that, but Nyle was definitely exhausted. You could just see it. His hands were down in round two, and that's when the tide was really just turning. He was eating a lot of shots from Zac, and pretty much he was just getting hurt, so he tried to shoot for some takedowns, and every single time he was just holding on to Zac's leg, and Zac was landing a lot of ground and pound, hard ground and pound. I thought that fight could have been stopped a couple times, but I see why it wasn't, though, just because like Nyle was doing just enough. He was getting hit, but he was scrambling when the ref told him to scramble, so it's just like, all right, well, you can't stop it if he's doing what you're telling him to do. So it was just the final couple minutes of that fight were pretty rough for Nyle just because of that, though. He was just holding on to that leg and just eating shots. So going in, or after that round, they had them all sit down, and I was like, oh yeah, there could be a round 3. So the way that TUF works is you have 2 rounds, and pretty much if it's 1-1 after those 2 rounds, you fight third round, and that's like the sudden victory round. And that's how they determine a winner. So they were like, yeah, be careful, there might be a round 3. And I was like, God, I hope not, because Nyle did not look like he was ready for a round 3, and then there wasn't. And that's when you kind of knew it was going to be the decision, because, I mean, round 2 was obviously Zac Pauga. So if it was a unanimous decision in 2 rounds, that means he probably got round 1, 2 on most of the scorecards, if not all of them. And that is what happened. Zac Pauga got the decision, moving on to the next round. It was tough to see Nyle lose. He seemed like he's a hard worker, and especially when you're the first fight of the season, and then you just have to sit there the rest of the season and help your teammates, knowing that you're not like a winner of the show. That's got to be tough to take, tough pill to swallow. But overall, it was a pretty interesting episode. Like I said, there was some interesting characters. There's some people that I'm definitely intrigued by, that I'm rooting for, and Zac Pauga definitely looked pretty good in his first fight. I'm curious to see who he fights next, and the next fight is a women's flyweight fight, I believe. And I know that they do. I don't know if they still do it because I skip it every time, but they used to do like little promos for the next episode in the credits, and I would always just get out of that, because with reality shows, the way that, and it's not just TUF, they're all like that. They kind of tease the show with like the best moments from the next episode, and then there's really not much else besides those moments in the episode. So I just like, I don't like getting a preview of the fight, a preview of what happened. I like to see it just organically, fresh as I'm watching it. So we'll see what happens in the next episode, and definitely leave some feedback on this one. You know, this isn't really like a set pod like the other ones are. You know, I'm just doing this because I feel like it'd just be interesting to sit here once a week and just ramble and bullshit about The Ultimate Fighter.